So this is the second part of my 3-minute skills on writing, and I'm going to talk about plot. Now, there are a number of writers who really don't like the idea of plot, don't like the idea of planning and trying to kind of contain a story. And to some degree, I agree with them that if you try and kind of hold it in, it's not going to happen. But there is a point to where your need for freedom really does need some sort of structure. There are a number of writers that have written about the general kind of parts of a plot. Christopher Vogler wrote a book called The Writer's Journey, which is more about screenplays, but it kind of falls into this this area of plot and the stages of a story. Also, if you really want to go into it, you want to try and find Vladimir Prop's Morphology of the Folktale, where he actually takes apart all the traditional folk tales and creates essentially an algebraic formula for what a story is. And it's quite a bit of hard reading. I read it for my dissertation. It is quite involved, but Christopher Vogler is a good one. Also, the introduction to David Eddings's Revan Codex includes quite a nice kind of description of kind of the stages of story. Now, I'm going to talk this story around about fantasy, because that's what I write. But this what you call it, cycle, I suppose, of story stages will fit with any story. You know, from kind of romance through to TV soap, there's always this cycle that goes on, and it's expected. It's kind of traditional. So first of all, we start with the home place. Now, this could be Hobbiton or a backwoods farm somewhere. Particularly in fantasy, it tends to be a farm, which is not important in any way except for there's a certain child on the farm who may turn out to be important later on. So you have this home place, and this home place may not necessarily be the home place of your hero. It may be a place that they've grown up. It's the place they know well. And then from this home place, you have their normal life continues on until they reach a moment of change. Now, you've got something like the One Ring appears, and the danger of the One Ring is realised. And, you know, you realise you have to go somewhere with it. Or lots of fantasy stories, you have someone suddenly discovers a strange power they have. So they've gone from being a fairly innocent to someone with a power, or something happens in the world that causes their home to no longer be safe and no longer be happy. So whatever this change is, it leads them to the quest. Now, the quest is a fairly important part of most stories. There is something that your protagonist is always looking for. So looking for the girl, looking for the cure to this disease, looking for something. So the quest takes up around about 2/3 of your story is the quest. And during this section, you've got various situations, and also your hero gathers up their companions and also the competition. In terms of fantasy, that's going to be your evil villain, you know, your Dark Lord or whatever. So in this portion of the quest, this is where the hero learns about themselves in reflection of the villain, because the villain is 95% of the time a reflection of the hero. There's always that thing going on. You can clearly see it in Harry Potter and Voldemort. There is that opposites attract kind of thing going on. So the quest portion is where they gather together their team, their friends, so warriors and wizards and all that kind of thing, and where they learn more about their abilities, they develop themselves, and they become more of a hero at this point. and may not necessarily be a willing hero or one who desires that kind of fame. In Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, the main character Rand al-Sol doesn't want to be the hero. He doesn't want to be the one everyone's been waiting for, and that is pretty clear throughout the first half dozen of the series, half dozen books of the series. But he eventually grows to realise that he can't help but be this hero he's supposed to be. So you've got to think about also the way the hero is kind of psychologically. Are they going to be a big, brash, kind of jump in and kind of get on with it kind of hero, or are they going to be a slow burner, a thinker? Are they going to be an actor or a thinker? That's kind of the things you need to think about. And these things will come as you write your story. They all kind of leap out to you. You'll suddenly realise that your hero shouldn't be doing this. They've made a decision that they wouldn't make. Things like that you'll realise when you come to draft and redraft and edit. So, from the quest, you invariably lead to a minor conflict. So, not necessarily a battle. This point it's kind of the precursor to a battle. So this is kind of a Helm's Deep or something before the big battle in Minas Tirith. Things like that. Or where you've got kind of the small battles in the Ministry of Magic before you have the big Hogwarts finale. That kind of thing is your minor conflict. And that invariably leads to the hero's choice. Now, 95% of the time, your hero's going to go the good way. Well, the easy way. They're going to want to choose whichever route is easiest for them. That may not necessarily be the right route, and most heroes try and avoid leaping into battle or leaping into the next thing. And there's that moment of doubt with that choice. And you've got basically the whole of the middle of Deathly Hallows, where Harry, Hermione and Ron are kind of floating in a tent somewhere, not sure what they're doing. So that is your moment. You've had your minor conflict, and you have this moment of, what do I do now? Before Harry decides to go to Hogwarts. So that kind of choice then leads to your big final battle. Now, in terms of anything that's not fantasy, in terms of romance and that kind of thing, it's not going to be swords out kind of battle. It's going to be a confrontation with someone. I call it a final battle because it is all encompassing. All the energy you've put into the quest and this thing that has changed, that has gone wrong, comes out in this final battle. And then from this final battle, hopefully at least, your hero reaches the Grail, finds the Grail, does what they're supposed to do. The Grail could be a cure for a disease, it could be an action, it could be the destruction of the ring, that kind of thing. The Grail doesn't have to be an object, it can be a task done, a decision made, they get married, that's your Grail. And then there is the return. Now, most stories have some element of a return in them. So even if your character started off as a farm boy, as in Belgarian in David Eddings' Belgariad, he becomes a king and a super strong sorcerer. But there is a point where he still returns back to the farm where he grew up, and he has a chance to look back on his life and realise that he probably never would have been happy there. So that moment of return, whether or not your hero stays in their home place or returns to the home place and is happy there, it depends on what's happened in the story. You have Frodo, who goes through all of his travails and all of the pain that he's felt with the loss of the ring, because his choice and final bit wasn't to keep the ring. He had the ring taken from him, so he didn't sacrifice the Grail, didn't sacrifice the ring. So therefore, that kind of keeps him in that kind of dark place. So he can't return home. He can't find any kind of peace back in Hobbiton. So there is that element that he gets to return home and almost live happily ever after, but he just can't. So he ends up going to the Grey Havens. So that is a basic cycle of a story. Christopher Vogler does this cycle in 15 or 16 steps, but I think this kind of covers most of these and most of the other kind of storyline bases. Now, I'm not expecting you to write out your story plan as home, change, quest, like that, because people don't think that way. You need to think of A to Z, really. So I would say your starting point, your home point, and your final battle come along a line. So in here, you look at your characters, you've drawn out a character profile for them, and you've got some idea of the things they know, the things they need to know. So along this line, you're going to have their various meetings with people, with love, or with death, along this point. And it's these things that affect how they come to the final battle. And if you can separate your short story or whatever into a number of points, they don't have to be exact, but you need to know where you're starting from, where you're finishing, and one or two things in the middle. If you're doing a short story, then that should be somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 words. And I think that kind of a basic story point should be no more than about 500 words. So if you're doing, say, a 3,000 word story, that means you get 6 points. So you get your start point, you get your end point, and you need 4 points in the middle. And that seems to work for me, at least. If, as you're writing, you find that things need to be said, as you're redrafting, you think, I missed this point, I need to show this happening, then by all means add another point in. But once you've got that kind of basic framework worked out, then you're laughing. I wouldn't consider this to be serious plotting. If you're doing a big, vast kind of epic saga, then you're going to need more than just a couple of notes. But for a short story, 4 or 5 kind of vague plot points will get you a first draft. And then you need to get on to your editing and redrafting, and that's equally as important as developing character and sorting out your plot. So I'm moving on to that in the third part. So that should be up online in the next 20 minutes or so. So I'll see you then.